Shoshi Kaganovsky. I don't know where to start with you. You are an inventor. You are a relief worker. You speak 5 languages. You go all over the world helping where people need help. And you just returned from the Ukraine. You are somebody who truly is a heart-centered entrepreneur. Your story is beyond amazing, and I want everybody to benefit for this very special time. What do you think is the first turning point in your life? You're born in Russia. You had to escape Russia, and you had to do it quietly because you are Jewish. And in 1991, when you escaped to Israel, there was a lot of anti-Semitism. So you couldn't tell anybody. Then you get in Israel, and what happens? 9 years old. And who supports the family? Shoshi.
So yes, looking back, I see every crisis as an opportunity or something that taught me a lesson. And yes, I would say the first crisis that I didn't overcome, but my parents or my mother did it for me, was really escaping the Ukraine. Once USSR collapsed, we were living in Ukraine, and it wasn't the best environment for us. My mother wanted something better for her daughters, so she took us and her parents, Holocaust survivors in their 70s, and we went to Israel. I will never forget, I was 5, but I will never forget that we ascended the plane and my grandparents fell to their knees and started kissing the ground, because this was the Holy Land, and this was the greatest achievement for them, to making it to Israel. We were doing quite well for a few years, but at some point, one of our family members lost all of our money in gambling. And I was 9, my mother was 45, quite ill. She had diabetes her whole life, but the medicine in Ukraine is so bad that she only started treatment for diabetes at 44 when we arrived to Israel. And she wasn't feeling well. She couldn't really work, even though she was a doctor. And having no other parent, my father passed away when she was pregnant with me. I was actually the first to learn the language, the Hebrew language, the first to understand the culture. I was running around, reading and, socializing. So it was almost natural for me to step in as the provider for the family. So I started washing dishes at a Chinese restaurant downtown in a very small town in Israel where we were living to support the family.
And at what age is this? Say that again. What age?
I was 9.
9 years old.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, 9.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah, but it was my first entrepreneurial venture, I would say. You learn fast when you don't have a choice, You learn fast when you are not treated as a child until you're, 17 or whatever people are doing today with their children. And very, very fast, I stepped into the plate and I started taking care of everybody and of myself. And I understood that if I want things, I'm the only one who can provide them for myself and for others. So that was a journey that hasn't ended yet. I still work and I still support everybody. But it was a turning point. It was a crisis that turned into an opportunity, because very early I learned what a paycheck is. And I learned that money doesn't grow on trees. And I learned that you need to plan and you need to save and you need to be prepared and you need to strategize. And that's thankfully, Israel is a welfare country. So at least, the medicine is free or almost free. So, when my grandparents got cancer and all the treatments my mom needed, at least I didn't go bankrupt for that. So that was enabling. And, relatively as a family, we were happy. We were okay. The worry about money was there all the time, hovering above our heads. How are we going to get, higher education? How are we going to get? I remember one conversation. I think I was 8. It was right before I started working. It was August, my birthday, and I overheard my mom and grandma talking about where are they going to get like $20 or something, as cheap as that, so that they can get me those little fluffy pets, fluffy toys I wanted. Ever since I decided I don't want to be a burden on my family, and ever since I haven't been celebrating my birthdays so that no one has to buy me any gifts.
Oh,
Yeah, it was the situation. And shortly after I started working because I knew I wanted things for myself. And I'm like, okay, I cannot get it from my mom, from anyone else. How am I going to get it? I'm going to work. Needless to say that I kept going to school, straight A student. At some point, I even went to a private school. So I really busted my behind, excuse me, my French, during the summers so that I can allocate enough money for my private school.
and what I think is interesting, what I've read, is that you learned how to budget because you didn't have any food. You were hungry.
Yes, ma'am. We had a few very tough periods in our lives, especially when we had to spend a big chunk of money. So, I would put money aside and then my grandfather died. So headstone would be thousands of shekels, or it translates into thousands of dollars too. For a family that has one provider who is 9 and about $400 from the government a month, a family of 5, you feel that. So yeah, it was there were a few periods in time where we were lacking basic things like groceries.
That is, and it's what I find so interesting is how you've learned these skills and what's happened to you in the interim. I mean, these skills of budgeting, these skills of strategizing, and just phenomenal to me. What were we going to say?
I was going to say, life happened to me. I had to. I don't know if I was actively reading books about strategy. I don't think so. I'm really sorry I didn't have any role models or mentors back in the day. So I somehow, with God's help, I guess, figured out I should be saving, or I should have a stash of money for, a cloudy day or a rainy day. And I pretty quickly realized, okay, this is the source of income, whether it's coming from the government in the form of $400 a month or whatever I'm bringing home. I would run around, I would do so many side hustles, babysit, I would clean. As a very young girl, I would clean apartments, I would clean apartment buildings, I would clean offices after hours. I would tag along with someone who can actually be registered as a worker, and I would help her and she would give me cash. Obviously, it was like a few cents every time, but still, it came into the same pile. And I knew that from that pile, I need to pay the mortgage, the bills, and I was paying all of that ever since we moved to Israel. Because again, I knew how I could talk. And back in the day, you couldn't do it online. So you had to go to the post office or a bank and pay your bills. And I would do that. And people would look at me like they look at Macaulay Culkin at Home Alone when he went.
Yeah, right.
Same. I would always get this look, hey girl, where's your mother? I'm like, she's not here, but can you please? And I would give, all the forms or everything.
God.
Take care of that or that. At some point, it was a small town. They knew. And they're like, oh, this is Valentina's daughter. Okay, this is the one who takes care of the grandparents. And, they started accepting me as like, okay, you can talk to her. She's legit. No need to call CPS.
So then what happens? I fast forward. Here we have 2006, you're in Israel. Would you please tell what happened? Sure about that?
Lord, it was the year the Second Lebanese War happened. So Lebanon was shooting missiles at the northern part of Israel. And the first missile actually hit 2 blocks from my house in Tiberias, in the little town I was living in. And the next day we had 70 missiles, and they went for a few good weeks. So what happened with the first missile is that a lot of people in my town got scared to the point where they thought another huge war is starting, and they packed their families, a few of their belongings, and drove towards Tel Aviv, or the center of Israel, to feel safer. A lot of them were selling their apartments, their assets, so that they can get cash quickly and they were selling them at a huge discount. So the market overnight, dropped. And I've been saving since I was 9, remember? And I was right out of the army. I just finished my service in Lebanon and Syria, and I decided to seize the opportunity. And even though I was scared and was trying to get my mother to Haifa, which is another city, transfer my grandmother to an elderly care facility in Tel Aviv, and, rearranging everything, I went ahead and bought 5 of those apartments that were for sale, 20 cents on a dollar, cash.
You were 18. How old were you at the time? 18?
21.
21 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
21 years old. And I bought them. Once I got my mom to one hospital, my grandma to another, outside of the city. When they were safe, I returned. I didn't have a car. I couldn't afford one back then. So I would only take a bus. Can you imagine? So I returned and I went to those apartments I bought, and I started fixing them, and painting and doing everything myself. I was pretty handy around the house because we could never afford handymen to come over. So I renovated them a little bit myself, bought some used furniture. And when the war was over, about, say, 2 months later, I started getting tenants. And before you know it, in a few years, I made more than 1,000% ROI, return on my investment. So I sold all those apartments at a premium, way higher than what I paid for them. And that's how I made my first 7 figures.
Yes. Yes. And what I find interesting, and we're going to talk about this as soon as we come back, we need to take a quick break, but we're going to find out about what she does with her million. We'll be right back. We are recording segment 2 with Shoshi Kaganovsky. Welcome back, our guest, Shoshi Kaganovsky. When we were taking a bit of a break, I asked Shoshi, I'm not used to a 9-year-old supporting a family. And I just, to me, that's kind of abusive. I got to be honest with you. What's your take on that?
I understand your perspective, and that will be the perspective I would say that it's prevalent nowadays, especially in the US. But when I was younger, when I started leading the family, it was my choice. I wanted things. I realized how to get them. And again, an immigrant family, my mom didn't know the language well and was experiencing, horrible health issues. My grandparents, couldn't help at all. My sister, she was 13 when we moved. It was a very difficult age. She found it very difficult to find friends and, new environment, new everything. But for me, we moved when I was 5. So by the time I was 9 or 10, I was an Israeli more than I was Ukrainian or Russian or an immigrant. And it was easier for me, I guess. And again, I think it's my personality of just leading the way or helping or taking the lead. And I was allowed to. I guess half of that was because my mother and grandparents didn't have a choice. They had to rely on me. And second, because I wouldn't let the family die otherwise, and I don't think it was abusive, but I would say that our roles reversed when I was very young. And my mom even told me several times that she feels that I'm a way better daughter to her than she's a mother to me, and how she feels sorry for all the hardships I have to go through in life and everything. But I kept thanking her for getting me out of Ukraine so that I will have a chance for a better life. And I did. The opportunities that were presented to me in Israel, even though I didn't have money, were tremendous compared to my peers, people my age in the Ukraine. And I'm so thankful to her for taking the step and giving up herself, her entire career and everything for the sake of our future being better. So my mom made a lot of sacrifices. And I thankful to her for that. And she kept saying that she's thankful to me for keeping the family together and alive and fed.
As you say that, it also, you're under such different circumstances than I know I can't even imagine what you're going through. I mean, I can't, I'm hearing the words, but I can't say, oh, yes, I can relate. I can't relate. So maybe with the context of things, that really was, loving on both your parts.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last
maybe in the context of things, it was very loving on the part that your mother was willing to give up everything to get you out of the Ukraine, loving on your part that it was natural for you to support the family. And, when you say that, it makes it, well, who can really judge?
Right. And my mother and I had a wonderful relationship. We could pretty much read each other's thoughts without being physically together. And everybody were jealous of our relationship. And even my friends, all my female friends would go to my mother instead of their mother to talk, to consult, my mom, everybody loved her. Our house would be full of people coming to talk to my mom because she would listen. And they knew they can trust her, that she will not gossip or, reveal secrets. So it was constantly people coming to my mom, which is a good thing, because when I moved to the US, after she gave me her blessing, she was so funny. I came to her and I said, Mom, listen, I'm traveling 250 days out of the year. I live out of my suitcase, and I think I need to establish a base in the US, both for my business and my own sanity, because I'm jet lagged all the time. And she's like, okay, how can I help? I'm like, well, I will not be here all the time. I will be mainly there. I would come to visit, obviously, but I really need to, go there and be there. Like, okay, why are you coming to me? I'm like, well, I don't want you to think I'm abandoning you. She's like, did I raise you alone for you to read me bad night stories when you're at the peak of your life and career? Go ahead, spread your wings and fly. You belong in the world, not in our little small town by your elderly mother. So she really gave me her blessing. Sure enough, once I landed in the US, she really started to deteriorate physically. Thankfully, not mentally. She was lucid until her very last breath. But it was a relationship where even if I was here, she was there. We could communicate and connect on a whole different level.
What a special relationship. And she must have given you, you're such a unique, unusual person, and your qualities that you have, which the next step is, this kind of leads into it. I was just so much of what your story is, I've been moved, but you saw a 6-year-old child was raped and attacked, and that moved you to do something pretty radical.
Right. First of all, my whole life I was very passionate about helping, and especially I'm sensitive to children's suffering. I haven't seen a child raped, God forbid, but I read a story about it. So I did read a story. One of the charities I donate to, this charity is helping women and girls around the world. They issued an annual report covering the rising sexual assault numbers, the statistics, the child trafficking. And it was horrible, this whole report. One story there was about this 6-year-old girl who was raped to death right in the middle of a very high traffic area where a lot of people are in one of the markets in India. And I was taken aback. I'm like, oh my God, how come no one helped? So many people around. And I answered myself that a smaller victim, if you cover their mouth and they can't scream for help, they have no way of signaling for help whatsoever. That prompted me to look for, think, and eventually invent Ring On. I was thinking, how can we help children or smaller victims who can't scream, don't have smartphones, signal for help when they're attacked, assaulted? God forbid, raped. And after a few ideas, I came to the conclusion that in any given situation, whether your hands are tied or you're pinned to the floor and the perpetrator is on top of you, or you're in the worst possible situation of kidnapping, you're in the trunk, completely apprehended, you can still reach with the thumb to your ring finger on both hands, right? Even if they're tied, you're at gunpoint, God forbid, school shooting, you can do that. And I created a ring with a toggle switch. When you move the toggle with your thumb, which can be done subtly, even if you're at a bank that's being robbed, it calls a third party, whoever you designated. So trusted recipients, your parents, friends, they receive not only an SOS alert showing your location, but they also hear a live audio stream because the ring has a microphone. So the recipient of the alert needs to take action and help you, or help the victim or the person activating the ring. Especially I was targeting children because, they 6 to 11-year-olds, let's say elementary school kids, they have nothing working for them. I really, really, really advise parents against giving smartphones to small children, because while you're at work, in the kitchen, doing your own thing, taking care of other children, pedophiles are sitting 24/7 hunting little kids, and before you know it, someone will get to your child, especially young kids who are mentally not capable of making decisions or realizing where danger is. So Ring On is there to really be a GPS tracker in normal times and a panic button during emergencies.
Well, yeah, and also, if I understand right, it actually works. There's something about it. It works even if you don't touch the ring. Let's say somebody grabs it. There was something about it that it still works, and that I wasn't really clear on that.
Correct. When the ring is removed, which is the first thing traffickers will do, they will remove electronics, the backpack, and the shoes from the child and toss them away.
Oh.
When the ring is removed, it automatically triggers the alert.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And not only that, you even donate your profits. Oh, big portion.
Yes, ma'am. So the business model, thinking of myself as a child, we could barely afford fruit, not to mention, safety devices. I think that as a society, it's our responsibility to protect all the children. Hence, the business model is 1-for-1. For every ring we sell, we shall donate a ring to kids in underserved communities. Why? So that we can make Ring On a deterrent, so that a pedophile or a trafficker will see a child with a ring, recognize its ring on, and say, oh, I'm not touching that child. I'm not going to attempt anything because I will be recorded and caught. I don't want to get caught. So that will be a deterrent, which is awesome for kids whose parents can buy that. What about the others? So Ring On wants to really protect all the children with the Ring On shield. So that's why we are donating rings as well.
I just think that is so fabulous. And I think this is something that everybody needs to know about. And we will have more information, of course, the text and everything that comes with this. Mm-hmm. You also are a first responder of types. You speak 5 languages fluently. I don't know if I have it quite all. I know it's Ukrainian, Russian. What's the rest? German, Polish?
Almost and almost.
Almost.
Hebrew.
Of course.
Japanese.
Japanese.
I know it's unusual, but I have a master's degree in Asian studies, so I speak Japanese. Looking for someone to practice with, if any of the listeners wants to. A little bit of English. I'm still learning.
A little bit, a lot.
And Arabic.
Arabic, okay. And you use these languages to help others too.
I try. So I'm registered as a volunteer with the Red Cross and a few other organizations, so that, my skills are out there. Here are the languages I speak. I can do computers. I can, build programs or, here's what I can do. If you need me, reach out. It first started when I came to Houston to volunteer after Harvey happened. I was on the phone fighting with the airline. Put me in Dallas, put me in Louisiana. I don't care. Just put me there, because I already felt it was my home. And I'm like, okay, I'll drive to my destination. Just put me somewhere. Tuesday was after Harvey that they opened the airports. I arrived. I was the only one on the road.
Yeah, this is 2017, just for those of you who aren't familiar
August.
with it. Yeah,
Yes,
August 25th, 2017.
Yes, ma'am. And I was during the day, I was helping different groups from, different synagogues and churches, just going to people's homes, removing doors, floors, walls, pulling up carpets, putting, a little pile, not a little huge pile outside. And I didn't even know the people I was working with, but, we would come into a house, tear it apart, whatever was flooded, move on. But between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., I was volunteering in one of the churches up on Highway 6. It was a church converted into a shelter. We had more than 400 people there. I can't remember how many families, but I was volunteering there with the Red Cross. So I was in charge of the security in the facility. And also, we were doing everything. So from reading children's stories to children, helping them with homework, preparing their breakfast and lunch boxes before the buses would come take them, helping people with computers and whatever I could. So that was my shift, the night shift, and then in the morning back into removing doors, floors, walls. And ever since and that's how I signed up for the Red Cross, and then started signing up as a volunteer by on call with other organizations. And one of those organizations reached out to me recently, said, we need a Ukrainian, Russian, and English speaker, and you are the only volunteer that speaks all three languages in our database. Would you be able to help? They specifically wanted me to build a database for Ukrainian orphans who were so young, they didn't know their last names, where they lived, their parents' names. They were collected in the woods along the border, alone, some naked, some barefoot, and they were put into a refugee camp. I cannot disclose the location for the safety of the children, and there were a lot of them. So I was called to create a database, try to talk to the kids in Ukrainian and Russian, and then put all the information in English into a system. Like after World War II, when people were looking for their family members. It's so sad that it's 2022 and we still let history repeat itself.
Yep.
So that was one of the things I was doing in East Europe in April and May.
I thought were you in the Ukraine or you can't say? I mean, I don't want to pry if you can't say.
Yeah, I was there on one trip.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can reveal right now.
Okay. So you were there. Yeah.
But I was in the adjacent countries, Romania, Moldova, Poland. Also in Israel, I helped with the refugees. Yeah.
Wow. So you are kind of on call for that too.
Yes. So, I try to help as much as I can, but especially during war times, and something as horrible as what's happening in the Ukraine right now, I was planning on going and volunteering on my own, even without being called to do that. And FYI, I'm not getting paid. I actually paid for my own ticket, lodging, food, and everything. And I was planning on going, and trying to help. And I returned a few weeks ago, but I still am on Zoom calls between midnight and 4 a.m. almost every day, our time, translating, or helping people on the border, and with a few organizations just translating. So because they're about 8 hours ahead, 7 or 8 hours ahead. So 8 a.m. their time is midnight our time. So I volunteer during the night. Whoever watches that, if you see my eyes being that's because I'm lacking sleep, but it's very rewarding. I'm so happy I'm giving the opportunity to help, because we were refugees once too, and people helped us too, and I really feel honored and happy to give a little bit back to the general public and it's just rewarding. I encourage everybody to go volunteer doing whatever you like. Just, it's such a good feeling that you're doing something for someone, making someone's day better, and not getting a reward for that, not getting paid. So that's something I love doing.
Yeah. And the thing is that we don't have to compare ourselves to you. I mean, that's a big order there. And I really support you. And I know I do some volunteer work, and I know how rewarding it is in the one I do. What is your favorite quote? Just curious.
Well, recently,
same.
right. I love a lot of quotes by Peter Drucker or other business people, but recently I found what gets measured gets done to be very effective in my life. So you know what? It also it's a little triumph. It's like when you cross something off of your to-do list, you're like done. So
yes.
if you set yourself, a few criteria or a few measurement metrics, and you're like done, or you reach that, you feel accomplished. And when you don't have that set, even if you reach something, it's not a win for you. You move on. So it's like a self-reassuring system even. So it helps me in business, in personal life. I have, lists and all sorts of metrics pretty much everywhere. And it keeps me on track. That's one. And second, I'm just, oh, look at that. Time well spent. Or I'm there yet. Oh, good.
That's great. It has been just amazing talking with you. You have to come back because we just scratched the surface with you. We really did. And we will have to get that cup of coffee very soon now that things are opening up, Shoshi. I'll tell you that much. I don't know why I have problems. I got to say Shoshi. I think it's the two SHs, so there you go.
Most Americans call me Sushi.
Sushi.
So I respond to anything remotely resembling Shoshi, but it's okay. It's short for Shoshana.
Yeah, Shoshana is a beautiful name. Well, Shoshana Kaganovsky, it has been my honor to have you today, and we will be in touch. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jody. Be well.